Good evening, and welcome to another program of Christians Alive. Christians Alive is a program about people that put their faith in action. That is, they get out of the pew and they do something about their relationship with Jesus Christ. And we have someone who has been that way most of her life in the Danbury area, and you are?
Annie Orr.
Now, Annie, we understand that you were driven to help out the Dorothy Day Center many, many years ago, but in order to get things accomplished, you've been on the front page of the Danbury News-Times and other things. Tell us about your Christian walk and then about why you're so driven to help at the Dorothy Day Center.
Well, I started at the Dorothy Day Center way back in 1983, and that was working one time a month with our church, the First Congregational Church of Danbury, that took over the second Wednesday of the month. And we have been there the second Wednesday of every month, every year since then. Now, in addition to that, they started a shelter behind the kitchen about a year or two after the kitchen opened. And the shelter, according to Board of Health rules, has 16 beds. And that shelter ran for a good 10 years or more and became overcrowded. Not overcrowded in the fact that they took in too many people, but they had to turn people away. And so they opened what they called overflow shelters at 4 different locations in the city. They included St. Paul's Lutheran Church on Spring Street, and then for a while St. James Episcopal Church on West Street, and the New Hope Baptist Church that was then on Cherry Street, and then the Jewish Center. It became very difficult trying to rotate places, and so the city was persuaded to open their city shelter. Now, the city shelter works in pretty much the same way as the Dorothy Day shelter. However, they have paid help, which creates a few little differences. And also, they're open during the day, and they're able to provide more services than our emergency shelters are. So we're very anxious to keep the city shelter still going. After the 2 shelters were open, after a couple of years, again we had overflow, people being turned out on the street. And the temperature got very, very cold one night. It was down to 9 degrees, and people were being turned out because both shelters at that time had only 16 beds, a total of 32 beds. It was then that I became alarmed because I was working one night a month in addition to the kitchen in the shelter. And so I decided that this was a terrible situation. In a town like Danbury, we shouldn't have people out in the cold all night. And so I was determined to have a permanent overflow shelter, and I wanted it at my church, the First Congregational Church. Because it's close to the other 2 shelters, it made it logical in that sense. But also we had a gym in the basement that could be used. So we started in 1903. So this is our 7th year, and we started again with 16 beds. However, although the Board of Health requires just 16 beds, we have numerous times had more than 16 people because it's very, very hard for me to turn anybody away when the weather is below freezing. And so that's the way it's been for the last 7 years. More people each year. Total, the first year was over 700 people. This past year, 111 different guests, but a total of over 3,000 days, or nights, I guess I should say. Well, we first heard about Dorothy Day because Paul Hines visited all the churches to elicit their help for filling in times at the kitchen. And that's when we first heard of it. I have always been involved in volunteer work in Danbury. I was with the Red Cross for 20 years. I was with the Girl Scouts for 20 years. I was very involved in just about the Red Cross disaster program, and I did shelters with them. Now, one night when the power went off, in came one of our shelter coordinators. I didn't know him at the time, with the people from the shelter, because since the power went off, they couldn't stay in the Dorothy Day shelter. And that was my first clue as to the workings of the shelter, and then I started volunteering there. So that was way back in '85.
Now, where is the, everybody talks about the city shelter. Most people know where the churches are, but where is the city shelter?
It's in a very good location, really, because it's on the corner of Spring Street, Elm Street, New Street, with the Kennedy Boulevard, where they all come together. It's behind the Portuguese Assembly of God.
What kind of help could the shelter use? What kind of help could Dorothy Day use?
Dorothy Day never asks for money. That's something that when I have to give a talk about Dorothy Day, I call it the miracle on Spring Street. They never ask for money. They don't send out a Christmas letter. They don't have a raffle for a fancy car. They don't have a golf tournament to raise money. All our gifts are free will offerings. It's amazing what donations come in to Dorothy Day. And it's not a cheap operation to run. It costs way over $160,000 a year to run the kitchen and shelter. However, so we don't ask for money, but we ask for helping hands. And we always need people that will stay the night at the shelter. We need people that will help us do laundry for the overflow shelter. We need people at the kitchen, not just to serve at mealtime, but to take some responsibility for the kitchen, which is very difficult. People that'll take charge of and be responsible for the bread deliveries, the milk deliveries, the pickup for the garbage, the recycling, and all the various parts of the kitchen. There is nobody that's employed at Dorothy Day.
So how can these people get in touch if they want to volunteer?
They can call me. My number is on the website, I understand. I don't know anything about the website. But they can call Dorothy Day. It's listed in the phone book under Dorothy Day Hospitality House, and they will give them the names. The way it works is I try to answer their questions. I say first, what did you have in mind for helping at the kitchen or at the shelter? And they'll tell me their time restraints and so on. And then I'll say, let me know the day of the week or of the month that you would be likely to work, and I will give you the name of the coordinator for that day. There's a different person in charge every day of the month. Now, when you think of it, that's at least 30 different coordinators. So that's why I call it the miracle on Spring Street. Can you imagine having 30 people in charge?
Well, Annie, on behalf of the community, and I think that your service has been very valuable to the community, I want to thank you. And is there anything else that we might have forgot to mention on the air that you would like people to know about the Dorothy Day and your work?
There's just one thing, and that is I would like to thank the Danbury and the surrounding communities for all the many gifts that they have given over this Christmas season. It was really remarkable, all the both additional help in the kitchen and the shelters, but also the gifts of money, food, and clothing that has come in. It's really been remarkable.
Now, also, they can contact the Dorothy Day Center for someone that will come and present the ministry itself?
Yes, that there's always someone that will go out and help and talk at different organizations to recruit more help. We're getting older, you know, the original people there are getting older. We need new blood coming along.